And here we go on a Tuesday night at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by. And of course, this is the rankings breakdown. So here we go. Leave those comments, questions there in the chat. It's always a mystery to try to figure out when these freaking rankings are going to be released, because of course they can't just say we're going to release the rankings at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. They got to try to rope you into watching a basketball game. All right. So I had no idea when these rankings were going to be released. I thought it was at halftime of one of these games, between games, whatever. So anyway, I kept checking for the rankings, couldn't find the rankings, and didn't know when they were going to be released. And again, ESPN just trying to rope people into watching a basketball game to get the rankings. That said, we've got the rankings. So before we check out what ESPN delivered tonight, or I should say the College Football Playoff Committee, because of course TV networks would have nothing to do with these rankings whatsoever. Let's keep in mind what happened last weekend that would affect these rankings. What results, what performance on the field would directly tie into the rankings? What would affect what you and what I believe about these teams and evaluate these teams? Okay, we had an Alabama team that's been highly regarded since it lost its first game against Florida State by 2 touchdowns and has mounted some nice wins against the likes of Oklahoma, or against Georgia and Vanderbilt and Tennessee. An Alabama team that lost Oklahoma by 2 points at home. So Oklahoma with a big, huge win against Alabama. Probably the most important and most impactful result of the weekend. So that would be one thing. We also had a Michigan team that slid by Northwestern. However you evaluate that, the Wolverines got the win, but didn't look very impressive in defeating a 5-5 Northwestern team. We had USC, also a 2-loss USC team, take on a good Iowa team and win that game after trailing by 2 touchdowns in the first quarter. USC defeated Iowa by 5. Elsewhere in the SEC, of course, we had Georgia with a monstrous win against Texas, and putting the Texas College Football Playoff hopes on life support with a 35-10 loss. And Georgia, of course, looking mighty impressive in doing so. We had a litany of games in the ACC, most notably Virginia won. Georgia Tech won, not impressively, but came back to defeat a bad Boston College team. Virginia beat Duke by a couple touchdowns. Miami slaughtered North Carolina State. If you put any type of value in that, North Carolina State is a 5-5 football team. Miami won the game by 34 points. And then, of course, we had all sorts of issues and game results in the American Conference, most notably Navy defeating South Florida by a field goal. And those are pretty much the results that meant much. Texas Tech held serve. BYU with a decent win against TCU, winning by 31 points. Those are the two teams that factor, at least at this point, into the Big 12 championship race. So let's look at the rankings, see what the committee is telling us, and then we take your calls. And of course, comments and questions are welcome there in the chat. Please just super chat contribution is welcome. Also, as it says down in the ticker down below, if you enjoy what we do here at the Voice of College Football, you can contribute directly by going to Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App. You see the links there in the description section. You can contribute directly. And wink, wink, this is actually a better way to contribute. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App directly to the Voice of College Football. Or without spending a penny, when you do your Amazon shopping, please use the link that we provide. It's in the description section of this video and all the videos, the Amazon link. When you shop on Amazon. The third edition of the College Football Playoff rankings, with 2 games left in the regular season and championship weekend. show us this. Ohio State, number 1, they beat UCLA by 38. Indiana is number 2. They beat Wisconsin by 24. Texas A&M, of course, got a scare against South Carolina, came back from 4 touchdowns down to win by 1. Georgia with the huge game that we mentioned against Texas, winning by 25. They slide up to number 4. Texas Tech, a beneficiary of the Alabama loss, certainly, as they have scaled up to number 5 in the country. Ole Miss at number 6. They defeated Florida by 10. Oregon is number 7 in the country now. They slid up a spot. We've got Oklahoma, of course, with the major win of the week, defeating Alabama. They go from 11 to 8. Notre Dame stays at number 9. Alabama, okay. So this is what we talked about with a number of callers in regards to the treatment of Oklahoma and Alabama being the loser of that game. How much would they suffer? They slide from number 4 to number 10. And the comparisons can now be made. Alabama's 8-2. Notre Dame, also a 2-loss team. Also other teams like Utah, Miami, and others. Vanderbilt, of course, Alabama defeated Vanderbilt. So where Alabama is now placed as number 10 in the nation, I believe I've got the Crimson Tide at number 8. BYU's number 11. They're a spot ahead of Utah with a better record at 9-1 versus 9-2. And also keep in mind, BYU defeated Utah by a field goal. They won over the weekend over TCU by 31. Miami is slowly but surely moving up the charts. They've gone from 18 up to 15, now up to number 13 with that monumental win against North Carolina State, 41-7. North Carolina State's a 5-5 football team. So Vandy was sitting out. Miami defeated NC State. I guess it was that impressive? Or is the committee continuing to correct a wrong, or what they perceive to be a wrong? They moved Miami to 13. We got Vandy at 14. USC has moved up considerably. Were they dominant? In no such way. They barely beat Iowa, but won against a good team. So that always is to be considered as well. What's more impressive, defeating a marginal team by a lot or beating a good team by a little? USC got bumped a couple spots for defeating Iowa. Georgia Tech stays pat at number 16. They had all sorts of issues with a 1-10 Boston College team. They won 36-34. Texas takes a tumble. Of course, they lost to Georgia. They fall 7 spots to number 17. They are seemingly out of it at 7-3. Michigan's number 18. The committee not necessarily impressed with defeating a 5-5 Northwestern team on a walk-off field goal. If the Wolverines miss that kick, they lose the ball game. Virginia won over Duke. They hold at 19. Tennessee's at number 20. They won against pretty much nobody. New Mexico State. Illinois. Keep in mind that we've got 7-3 teams all over the country. They're everywhere. Arizona 7-3. Cincinnati 7-3. Nebraska 7-3. Washington 7-3. But Illinois makes it in there despite a 17-point loss to Washington. So the head-to-head does not count there. And why does this matter? In a sense, it doesn't, because these teams are coming nowhere close to the playoff. However, they obviously factor into the value that other teams' resumes have. So the committee is tipping their hand here. Missouri's number 22. They defeated Mississippi State by 18 points. Houston gets into the top 25. They've got a record that looks impressive at 8-2. They did not sneak into my top 25. That actually makes sense. They were certainly considered. Houston and I believe Tulane were the last two out, or the first two out of my top 25. There's Tulane at number 24. They have the most impressive wins, certainly out of group of 5 teams. And then we've got Arizona State at number 25 at 7-3. So if the playoffs started today, we would have those top 10 teams in the playoff. Numbers 1 through 10, Tulane out of the group of 5, and Miami, the assumed ACC champion, at number 13, even though Miami is not in line to play in the ACC championship game. So that's a bit convoluted because let's say Virginia, for example, at number 19 is in a better position to play in the ACC championship game. Virginia does not even play this weekend. They're 9-2. They've got one game left. They take on Virginia Tech. And if they can get past a bad Virginia Tech team that lost to Florida State this past weekend by 3 touchdowns in Virginia, by most, tiebreakers will play in the ACC championship game. I really don't think that there's a way that they can't. They've got one loss. Georgia Tech has one loss in the conference. Pitt has one loss in the conference, and they've got a game with Georgia Tech and also a date with Miami. So Pitt doesn't seem like they're playing the kind of football that would get them to an ACC championship game, but Pitt still has definitely a shot with 2 huge games coming up for the Pitt Panthers, who are unranked, but could still get to the ACC championship game. All right. So we've lined it up best we can. We got Trey stopping by to talk some football.
Hey, what's up, Mark?
Not too much. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm excited about these rankings, Mark. I couldn't wait from Saturday all the way to Tuesday to talk about this. We've been on a roll talking about a lot of theories, and the first thing I want to say about these rankings here is very confusing at times what they're looking for.
Okay.
As a viewer and just a fan, I would love to see all the conferences champions, except for the MAC and stuff, the ones that matter. The best group 5 and the 4 Power 4 champions should be honored, but the rest of them, like the rest of the 7, I want the best 7 not be out there.
Sure.
And I think it's Notre Dame. I think they have the resume. Look, now people will hate on it, and I mentioned it yesterday to the USC guy, who's a great guy. And if they only lost by 7 or less, if they turn around those 2 losses, they'll be undefeated, and we'd be talking a different story. Notre Dame should be in. They surely be in. Look at them. They're on fire. They got a running back that should be in the Heisman. Jeremiah Love, and the other guy that's not mentioned in the Heisman is that Texas Tech linebacker. He should be in the Heisman too. Notre Dame should be above Oklahoma. Now, the 9 is kind of underrated them. Oklahoma hasn't been the same. You know, they don't look like they've been the same. And Alabama got overhyped, in my opinion. They're not showing consistency. Yeah, you beat Georgia and you beat quality teams, but you're losing to teams that you should beat. They should have beat Oklahoma. They outmatched them. They beat them on every statistic, but the one thing that held them back was turnovers. I don't think if they were in the playoffs, they'll be ready to take on a Texas Tech or Georgia again or Ohio State. I don't think they'd be ready for that, Mark.
You don't think Alabama would be ready for Texas Tech?
No. I think Texas Tech would actually beat Alabama.
Okay.
In my opinion. But sure. I also like
that's what Utah. It is. It's all opinion.
I also like Utah.
I'm totally lost on you putting Notre Dame's wins up against Oklahoma and Alabama.
Yeah, you can't just base it on the conference. You know, you got to have.
I'm not basing it on the conference. I'm basing it on the wins that Oklahoma and Alabama have versus what Notre Dame has posted. Notre Dame's best win is who?
Actually, it would be Pitt.
Pitt's a better team than USC?
Yes. No, come on now, Mark. Pitt lately has been on fire. But they're closely matched,
Pitt
though.
Sucks. They're not a good football team.
Pitt's not a good football team?
Pitt's not a good football team.
We talked about the other day they're in contention of the ACC.
I don't care what they're in contention for. So is Duke. Duke lost to UConn. Duke lost to everybody imaginable.
I'm glad Duke got I'm sure Duke is eliminated in
they're not eliminated.
Yeah. Wow, they're still not?
No, they're not eliminated.
Oh my gosh.
Pitt is not a really good football team. They're a Pitt is Minnesota.
All right. But you look at Notre Dame, they competed versus a good Miami team, not great, but good, but also Texas A&M.
Sure.
So you look at the eye test, Notre Dame plays better than Alabama does. They're more consistent.
Who has Notre Dame beaten?
They
You're
beat Pitt and
offering
USC.
Pitt.
USC, Pitt, but they got quality losses too.
Okay.
They got quality losses.
Alabama has beaten Georgia. That sound like a quality win? Is that
Yes.
pretty good?
Yes.
Not bad, huh?
No, I think it was one of the best. That is actually the best win they have.
They beat Vanderbilt.
Eh.
Wait. You are touting the Notre Dame win over Pitt, but the Alabama win over Vandy is
Yeah.
Come on, Trey.
Oh, come on now. Vanderbilt was I
You
kind
need
of
to
thought
talk to me more often. We're trying to straighten you out during these conversations.
Well, I can't buy that Vanderbilt. I think they were way overhyped.
You're buying Pitt, but not Vanderbilt.
Yes.
You have ranked Pitt as a better team than USC and Vanderbilt.
Yes. They did not handle that Alabama. It showed if they were closer to Alabama, the game in Alabama, they were done better. But they got manhandled in that whole game.
Trey, who was paying you to say this?
Oh, nobody. I'm actually for free. Nobody's paying me, Mark.
I thought maybe there was some kind of Pitt Panther booster.
No, I'm not just hopping up Pitt, but it's a good win. They have a good defense. They were very inconsistent though. They're inconsistent throughout the time. But 7-3, I think they were 7-3, 6-3 at that time.
They are 7-3, and Pitt certainly has done absolutely nothing to show that they're a good football team this year.
They're pretty good.
They're Minnesota. They're Minnesota. They're not as good as Iowa. We could toss out all sorts of teams across the nation. The Pitt is like in the middle of the Big 12. I don't think they're as good as Arizona State. They're TCU. They're Arizona. That's how good Pitt is.
Really?
Yeah.
I think they.
Who is Pitt beaten that's any good?
Pitt. Let's look at that. I'm looking at their schedule right now. I have it up, thank God. But
why we're talking about Pitt, I have no idea, but I guess I'm partially to blame.
Well, they lost to Louisville. That wasn't good. They lost to
let's see. Yeah, they've beaten NC State and Florida State. Pitt has not beaten a team with a winning record.
But they got a chance for Georgia Tech to be different.
Well, no, we're not talking about what's going to happen in the future. Pitt's not a good football team. All right, so what's your next point, Trey?
The next point is
that Notre Dame's better than Oklahoma and Alabama because they beat Pitt. Okay.
No, it's just because of the eye test. They look good. I think they're better prepared and function as a team and have probably better, games than Alabama.
You're going to base your rankings on the eye test.
Yes, because it actually means something too. You can't just statistics is very important. You do statistics, I do statistics, but at a certain point, you got to look at that eye test too.
I have never been on here in all the years that I've done this, probably since the first one, 2014. So this has been 12 years that I've come on here after these rankings come out. Have I ever cited anybody's statistics? Like they're 13th in the nation in offense or they're 82nd in defense. I've never cited any statistics as being any validation of anybody. It's always been about results on the field against good or poor competition. That has been my complete analysis.
All right. The next point, I take an L on that. I see but Notre Dame's a good team. They just
I didn't say they weren't a good team.
Okay.
They don't have the resume that Oklahoma and Alabama have.
I would also base it on the future. How would they end up with each other? Like
you're basing your rankings today on what's going to happen in the future?
Yes. Mark, I make you worry sometimes.
Oh, I'm not worried about any of it. It doesn't affect me what you think. You're
No.
basing tonight's rankings on what you think is going to happen in the future.
Well, if Notre Dame don't trip up anywhere, they should be locked in, though, Mark. And just to be
Yeah, they
honest,
should be. What's
I
that have
don't
to do
think
with tonight's rankings?
they should be higher up, and they kind of,
They should
I
be
think,
higher.
yeah, look, just
Well,
above Oklahoma. No,
oh,
no,
okay.
no. I think Oregon should go down. They haven't beat nobody. They lost to Indiana. That was their one chance. If we're going to penalize a one-loss team, why the hell we punish BYU so bad?
Oregon's best win would be against Iowa.
And you see how Iowa ended up. I bought that hype too.
Iowa's as good as USC.
No, I don't know about that. I think USC can beat Iowa. Didn't they even play?
They're better than Pitt. Iowa's a better football team than Pitt.
Oh, come on. Pitt would even beat Iowa now.
No.
No.
Iowa is a much better football team than Pitt. Pitt is not playing Indiana down to the last play of the game. They're not playing Oregon to the last play of the game. No, I will not accept that whatsoever.
But Pitt would beat Iowa.
Pitt is
They
not
would.
beating Iowa. No.
Iowa can't even score. They can't
Pitt is
score.
horrible.
They have a better offense than Iowa. They really do, Mark.
So that's one side of the ball. Iowa's a much better team than Pitt.
I call it even.
No, not accepting that. That's ridiculous. No.
What?
No. Pitt lost to a 4-7 West Virginia team. They got completely annihilated by Notre Dame on Saturday. And who's their other loss? They've lost 3 games. Pitt lost to
West Virginia and Louisville.
Oh, yeah, they lost to Louisville by a couple scores. No, you cannot compare these two teams. Okay. Yes, I'm not touting Iowa as some great football team, but they're better than Pitt.
Quick points before I go here. Utah.
Yes.
I love Utah. I like how they bumped them up. I like that. I like Utah on the top. They should. People need to pay attention here, Mark. That Utah, you know how Kyle Whittingham at the end of the year, that Utah team is very dangerous when it comes to the end of the year. I don't think nobody should wants to play Utah. Utah is very dangerous, and it's been shown in the past, and they're just as good, and they can out physical somebody. They can out physical any team, not above like. I would even say they would beat Notre Dame. Utah would beat Notre Dame.
Oh, okay. Wow. You were just touting Notre Dame for like a half hour. And now you're saying Utah's better than Notre Dame.
Utah would actually out physical Notre Dame.
Okay.
I think so. But Alabama would beat Utah, though. Thing.
Whoa. You're running in circles here. You just said you were going on and on about how Notre Dame's better than Oklahoma and Alabama. Oklahoma and Alabama. Notre Dame's better than Utah's better than Notre Dame, but Alabama would beat Utah. I can't. All right, 30 seconds, Trey. What do you got?
All right, the ones I'm actually really shocked that Texas was not lower. That third loss should be a nail in the coffin for them. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. Well, I don't care.
That doesn't mean that it's not a nail in the coffin.
I mean, it should. I didn't say it's going to be, but it should. I think it should.
I think they're appropriately ranked. Where is Texas? I've got them at 18.
But they lost to Florida, and they got destroyed by Georgia. Let's just be honest. They got completely outmatched versus Georgia.
I don't have big issues with Texas at 17.
They should go behind Michigan, Virginia, and they should be above Tennessee, though. I think they're kind of ranked higher than they should. Also, I would put Virginia over Michigan. Virginia should be over Michigan. I'm surprised that James Madison is not over Tulane.
Virginia should be over Michigan. Why?
Michigan, they lost to USC, right? And they almost lost to Northwestern. but it's just win and survive. Win and survive.
Virginia's pretty much lost almost everybody on their schedule.
What? They're 9-2.
I didn't say that they weren't 9-2. You were citing close wins. Virginia lives on close wins. Virginia beat North Carolina on a 2-point conversion.
True, but they beat Louisville.
Yeah, in overtime.
Louisville's all right.
You're knocking Michigan based on playing close against Northwestern, and I'm letting you know Virginia has played close against everybody.
But Michigan too. They almost lost to Purdue. They almost lost to Northwestern. They almost lost to Nebraska. They got too close versus Wisconsin. They got completely outmatched versus Oklahoma.
All right, Trey.
Come on.
Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you.
All right. Pitt's better than USC. Pitt's better than Iowa. Pitt's like unbeatable unless you're Notre Dame, West Virginia, or Louisville. So we learned that Pitt is just a powerhouse. They should be like in the top 5 in the country. And that Notre Dame's better than Oklahoma and Alabama, but not as good as Utah. But Alabama would beat Utah. All right. Well, that's where we're at. All right. We got the real MVP stopping by.
I don't understand how some people see the world they do, Mark. I mean, we're watching the same games, right? This isn't the Steelers. He's watching when he says Pittsburgh.
Yeah, maybe that's Pittsburgh. Yeah, maybe we're watching Aaron Rodgers play, and I know that he's over the hill, but he's still pretty good. He's okay. So I guess he's mixing up Saturday and Sunday football or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the only thing that can make any logical sense to me. I
didn't anticipate, DeReal, that we'd kick off our show, take our first call, and we'd be talking about the merits of Pitt football for a half hour.
Yeah, are they ranked, by the way?
They are not ranked.
Okay, so we're talking during a ranking show about a team that's unranked. Is that correct?
We are.
And that seems a little bit ironic. Anyway, Mark, RIP to the Michigan Wolverines. Their playoff chances, I don't know what they are. They're less than they were an hour ago. They're behind a 3-loss SEC team, Mark. I mean, it's over. It is over for them. Texas can win their next 2 games. Their 2 games are very similar to what Michigan's going to do in their next 2 games. If Texas was going to fall behind Michigan, it was going to be this week. It's over for them. It's just over. So they're out at 18. And this is absolutely shocking to absolutely nobody except Michigan fans who believe for some reason that if they played Oklahoma this week, they would beat Oklahoma.
Does Texas play one of those SEC specials this week, or do they play somebody in the conference?
They play, I think it's probably one of those SEC specials, if I had to take a guess.
Okay. Then they got Texas A&M. Okay.
Yeah, that Texas A&M game's very comparable to Ohio State.
Sure.
Argue with me, Michigan fans. You got a problem with that. Anyway, let's go to the actual top of the rankings. Why Alabama is behind Notre Dame? Why? No sense, no logic at all.
Yeah,
I guess... I just don't get it. I don't get why Alabama's behind Notre Dame. Notre Dame has no good wins. Alabama's beaten Georgia. Alabama has beaten a bunch of good teams, 4 or 5 teams better than anything Notre Dame's beaten. You know, it is what it is. But Mark, more importantly than the actual rankings is, did you see the committee chair response to Reese Davis's questions?
I couldn't figure out when this stupid thing was on, to tell you the truth. So, no, I did not.
Mark, his answers literally open up plenty of doors. It was more impactful than the rankings themselves.
I'll have to go back and watch. Go ahead.
His first thing was he was asked about Miami and how come they're behind the Notre Dame Irish, despite Miami beating NC State more by a bigger margin and the head-to-head win. And he said, the committee chair, I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but his basic point, well, Miami is in a different tier of teams than Notre Dame is right now. But if they're closer, then we would value the head-to-head win. We would look at them in a direct comparison. So apparently there's a tier gap between the number 9 team in the country and the number 13 team in the country, and they're not being compared right now head-to-head. This tells me that at the end of the season, if they're 10-2, Miami will jump Notre Dame.
Because Miami will magically jump based on beating Virginia Tech and Pitt to a different tier?
Yes. Yes. It's stupid, but they're moving them up every single week by beating NC State and these teams that don't matter. I'm serious.
Mistake. They know they made a mistake, and they're just trying to kind of just inch them up. Yes.
Yep. So when they're at the end of the year, and the second bombshell mark that was used is Reese Davis said, what are your thoughts or his question was about the conference championship games. What's the committee going to do with them? This was the $1 million question. This is what we've been speculating for a few weeks now. The committee chair said this is a 13th data point, and it will be treated as such.
All right.
So last year, whoever, I think it was Ward Manuel, the Michigan AD, somehow looks even more foolish and even worse because the committee for 11 out of 12 years is doing it one way, and then 1 year they do it a completely different way. This tells me BYU, if you lose the Big 12 title game, you're out. There's a potential for like a US or a borderline Big 10 team that's on the bubble, like a Michigan or a USC, if they get absolutely, I don't know, some crazy scenario where they somehow make it in over in Indiana because of tiebreakers. They get throttled, they're probably out. So we've got a lot of interesting now scenarios that can occur just based on these two questions that have been answered by the chairman of the committee.
Yeah, I don't know that that's really going to shake things up too much this year. I can't find a scenario in the Big Ten where an undefeated Indiana team, even if they lose to Ohio State by 40 points, is going to drop below a 2-loss.
No, but what if Indiana loses a conference? Or what if they lose a conference game, Michigan wins out, they play whoever in the...
Indiana only has one game left.
Okay.
Purdue.
Okay, they may not lose that game.
Yes.
So
they are going to be undefeated in the Big Ten championship.
Okay.
Game.
Let's say Michigan wins against Ohio State. Okay. They get the tiebreaker. They're the 10th best team in the country. They play Indiana. They lose by 49 points. Do they drop out?
Yes, Michigan at 10-3, losing the Big Ten championship game.
Yes. Whereas last year they wouldn't have dropped out.
Yes.
Supposedly. That's where it would matter.
Yeah.
So, and also, I guess much more likely scenario, nobody's talked about it. What if Alabama goes 10-3? What if they lose to Texas A&M in the SEC championship game? They're right at the cut line. Do they fall out?
Especially if Texas A&M, let's say, loses to Texas, and it weakens their. Let's say they go into the SEC championship game at number 6. Let's say they fall from 3 to 6 or 3 to 5, somewhere in that range. They could, I would think that maybe the committee would drop a Texas A&M loss to Texas to behind Georgia and Texas Tech. Let's say they're number 5 or 6, and then they beat Alabama, who could of course play. No, I guess not. If they lose to Auburn, they're out, and Georgia goes to the championship game. So anyway, yes. So Alabama's 10-2. They lose. They're 10-3.
Yeah, right now they're the last team in.
Yeah, and the Auburn game's not going to do much for them.
Right.
That's a possibility, although that's still a solid loss if it's a close game in the SEC championship game.
Oh, and just to respond real quickly, Michigander, I've never advocated for an 8-4 Texas team to make the college football playoff. I've advocated for a 9-3 Texas team to make it over Michigan. How many losses does Texas have, Mark? They have 3 losses, right? If they win their last 2 games, they're still going to only have 3 losses. I've never advocated for an 8-4 Texas team. The only team at 8-4 I said that could make the playoff this year was Florida. Florida's not going to finish 8-4, so I don't know where you got that. That's fake news. People saying I'm delusional and stuff. I'm just saying what I heard the chairman say. Like, If you got a problem with it, take it up with him. Don't take it up with me. I'm dissecting what he told Reese Davis, and I'm using my interpretation of it, which seems logical and seems to make sense. Now, if you don't like it, win your games. If Notre Dame beat Miami, they wouldn't have been in this situation. It's not my fault that the committee chairman said, hey, we've got different tiers and Miami's not being compared to Notre Dame despite them having the same record and all that stuff. I don't know why he said that. I don't believe that makes any sense. But that's what he did say. Okay? I'm not saying I agree with it. I don't agree with it. Mark, do you think Miami and Notre Dame right now should be compared?
Absolutely, they should be compared. Their seasons are extremely comparable, even if they had not played each other. Miami's tried to bulk up their non-conference schedule, and let's say Miami would have played instead of Notre Dame, they would have played Oklahoma and won that game. In the same fashion they beat Notre Dame. I think they have very comparable schedules. Yes, they should be compared.
Okay, I don't agree that the committee's not comparing them. I like it.
I have no idea what that even means. It sounds stupid.
It sounds like they've got it in tiers to me. So what they're doing, based on my interpretation, if I had to guess, 1 through 3 is in a tier. They're tier A. 4 through 12 is in tier B, or 4 through 10 is tier B, and then 11 through like 20 is tier C. And they're just comparing those teams and just ranking those teams against each other.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like they're doing.
If they're doing that, that's an archaic and very inflexible way of looking at things, because you know as well as I do that we could have sets of teams that are comparable, that could, the number one team in the country could be far better than everybody else. I'm not saying that's the case this year. I'm just saying that could be the case. And then you could have the next 7 teams be very comparable. You can have all sorts of configurations of who should be comparable to each other. And that should not be set in stone. Like, we only compare the first 8 teams and then the next 8, or whatever
I don't know. I'm just speculating based off of what the committee rankings have been.
Saying that if they're that inflexible, then that's not a good way to approach this.
Yeah, I don't think he said tier. I think he said pod or pool or something like that, but it's the same basic thing.
Now I understand if he's trying to get away from saying that they are directly comparing Miami and Notre Dame, because then obviously that head-to-head really comes into play and they look bad for having them 4 spots separated. But of course they're comparing them.
Right. Well, at least they should be. I don't think they are. And John DiAdamo, just to respond to you real quick, Texas wouldn't get in over 9-3 Michigan if they both finish 9-3 because of SEC bias. It would be because Texas has much better wins than Michigan. It's because in these, they've had less struggles against less mediocre teams, where Michigan struggles literally every week against mediocre teams. Texas is just the better team. I mean, I don't know how, like, it feels like people that accuse me of bias has their own bias. If you don't look at Texas's results this year and look at what Michigan has done and say, man, Texas is better based on the results, I don't know what you're watching.
Yeah, let's take a 9-3 Texas team against a 9-3 Michigan team, and let's say the remaining games were close; they were reasonable games.
Let's say they lose to Ohio State by 7, the same margin Texas did.
Yes, yeah. So we can just throw out that game. Texas lost to Ohio State by a touchdown. Michigan lost to Ohio State by a touchdown. We won't even go crazy about home and road or anything like that. We'll just say that's what it is. Texas. Okay, let's start with Michigan. Their best win would be Washington. It'd be Washington by 17 points. Washington's probably going to finish 8-4. They're 7-3 right now. Don't know who they play this week. They've got Oregon at the end. So let's say Washington goes 8-4. That's Michigan's best win. They've got a Nebraska win by a field goal and Nebraska's probably going to go 8-4. Nebraska's got Penn State this weekend, and they've got Iowa. They're 7-3. Let's say they go 8-4. So Michigan would have 2 8-4 wins, and that's it. Michigan would have a loss to Oklahoma by double digits on the road against one of the top 10 teams in the country, and they would have lost to USC by 3 scores, and USC is a top 15 team right now. Okay, compare that to Texas. Texas would have a win against Texas A&M, the number 3 team in the country, a 17-point win against Oklahoma, top 10 team in the country, a win against Vanderbilt, the number 14 team in the country. That's 3 really good wins. They do have a bad loss against Florida, but if you understand football and watch it, you understand that Florida's a talented team that played close against like the likes of Ole Miss this past weekend, but still record-wise a bad team. And then, of course, they lost to Georgia by 4 scores that I think would be comparable. I would actually rate the Texas loss against Georgia to be more legitimate by 25 points than Michigan losing to USC by 18. Georgia's that much better than USC.
We can call it a toss-up just so Michigan fan has nothing to gripe about.
Okay, that's comparable. Michigan loses to USC by 18. Texas loses to Georgia by 25. Yeah, the wins are not anywhere in the same ballpark.
Right. So, and the fact that Texas this week, Mark, with 1 additional loss, is already ranked ahead of Michigan, tells me that if they win out, Texas is going to be ahead of Michigan. Now, neither of these teams are probably going to get into the college football playoff because they're both not good enough football teams. They're good teams. They're legitimately good teams, but they're not good enough to make the college football playoff. Final thing I'll say, I guess, just to make Big Ten man completely mad, is, the Oregon man, if you're a fan of them and they lose this week, Mark, Alabama dropped 6 spots, losing to the number 8 team in the country by 2 points. And having wins over, all those wins you talked about earlier. How far is Oregon going to fall, man? Oregon might fall behind Vanderbilt. I'm not even joking. Like, they're in a bad way if they lose this game.
Yeah, well, they should be if we're going to use the same criteria, because Oregon's resume is very flimsy. They look good. They do what you would think top 5 team would do. They go out and pummel Minnesota, but Minnesota's not a good team. But they do look the part. They just have a walk-off win against Iowa, and that's what they've got.
Yeah, I got you. Trey, don't worry. We can debate later about how the Pittsburgh Panthers would somehow beat Alabama. You want to debate me and smoke me? Because you want to talk about Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh might not even be as good as UConn, Trey. It's okay.
And let me clarify.
These are just facts is what I'm saying. I'm sorry these facts offend you.
About one of my comments about Pitt. I'm not saying that it would be impossible for Pitt to beat Iowa. Iowa's not a great football team. But Iowa is decidedly a better football team than Pitt. That doesn't mean that they cannot lose to them. They could lose to them. But if they play 10 times, Iowa's winning 7 or 8 times.
Right. And that seems pretty logical and pretty reasonable based on the result. But everything I see in your comments section right now about everything I say, there's no facts in there to respond to me. No evidence is provided. It's just bias, propaganda. And this is what I'm tired of seeing, and this is what we as college football fans need to do better. Bring your own set of data to compete my set of data. And if your set of data, you value it more than my set, that's totally fine. But just saying this is propaganda or bias or all that, maybe it's not. Maybe I just see things and value things differently than the way you all see things and value things. And that's totally fine. But you provide an argument. Because just say...
I think we're starting to bring weather conditions into it. So Oregon did not blast Iowa because it was raining. I think we have rain... teams that can't compete in the rain or something. I don't know what that's all about. So,
yeah, I know. And by the way, just final thing I'll say, Michigander, I have debated literally anybody who wants to debate. I will gladly debate any Big Ten fan ACC fan, Big 12 fan. I don't care who it is. I will gladly debate them because when you got the facts on your side and you've got the results on the field to back it up, it's pretty easy to make the case for why the SEC should have 5 teams in the college football playoff, maybe 6. You know, Mark, 84% of people, when you did your poll, said 5 SEC teams wouldn't make the college football playoff. It would be 4 or less. And now look at where we're at. It's at least 5, most likely, maybe 6. You know, facts have are stubborn, Mark. They never change based on what you feel like, okay? And I'm sorry that everybody's hurt and now all their fifis are upset because their team lost to a 5-3 SEC team. How about this? Get better. Get better. It's not our fault to change. Big Ten man wants to expand the playoff to 24 teams. Hey, Mark, how about 8 or 9 SEC teams per year making the college football playoff? How about 9 SEC teams making the playoff? How about LSU at 8-4 this year making the college football playoff? Would you like that? Because I wouldn't. But that's the direction we're going down. And this is why I said you all wanted it. This is what you all wanted, a 12-team playoff to get more access. Congratulations. Alabama's now got the access to kick your butt with 2 or 3 losses in the college football playoff and ruin one of these 11, 12, or 13-0 teams season. That's what you all wanted. And that's what you all are probably going to get. Because I think we all kind of know these Oregon teams, Texas Tech team, Indiana and Texas A&M teams that are a little bit suspect at times, playing the most talented team in the country, the team with all the pro players, the team at their absolute ceiling has looked like one of the 3 or 4 best teams in college football all season, is probably going to win that game. Just is the way it is. I can't help it. This is what you all wanted. Anyway, Mark, I'll see you next week when Texas is ranked number 12 in the country, and people will be crying about that.
Thanks, DeReal. Appreciate it. Yes, unfortunately, not enough people call the show and have discussions with me about this stuff. That's unfortunate because I'm here. I'm here every night, and that's not to talk to the same 4 people. So I'm here to talk college football and have the discussion. And let's take our super chats before we take our next call. All right, so we've got who do we got here? I am not getting that to blow up for me. Michigander. Texas lost to Florida. Yes, that's a data point. And went into overtime with Kentucky and Mississippi State. Yeah, those are called close wins. Absolutely. Yes, those are under consideration. And got blown out at Georgia. But yeah, Michigan ain't comparable. SEC bias. Okay, so Michigander, if you're commenting on what DeReal said, I'm not going to vouch for him and whatever he was stating about his comparison between Texas and Michigan. So let's separate 2 things that I have to explain every week when I put out my top 25. Because we've got a lot of people here who can't separate fact from speculation, projection, all those things. That's what I do when I make predictions every week. I am speculating. Do I get them all right? No, I wish I did. Don't get them all right. Nobody does. So anyone, first of all, who makes a comment that so-and-so would beat so-and-so, and we're talking about playoff level type teams, not Ohio State would beat Rutgers. Well, we all know that. We don't need to make those type of statements. Those are obvious statements. No, I'm talking about Michigan would beat Alabama or Alabama would beat Michigan. That's a guess. That's probably your bias because you know what usually happens is it's never the Alabama fan who says Michigan would beat Alabama, and it's never the Michigan fan who says Alabama would beat Michigan. Because I've done this for way too long. And I hate to tell you all that you're so incredibly biased. Not all of you. Most of you are so incredibly biased. You basically can't see past your nose on what is reasonable, factual, what's happened. Okay. Now I will speak for me. That was DeReal comparing Texas and Michigan with whatever criteria we went through the results. I would in no way say that Michigan is better than Texas or Texas is better than Michigan. I think there's more evidence of Texas playing really good football and at their best being able to beat Michigan, because I haven't really seen good football out of Michigan against anybody except Washington, kinda. If we're going to really put Washington as some excellent football team. But so I know that Texas can play really well. Can Michigan play really well? I'm sure that they can. I go on Michigan podcast every Tuesday and try to convince Steve Dace that Michigan has some hope this year. They can beat Ohio State. That would not surprise me in any such way. Does that mean that they're better than Ohio State? They're not better than Ohio State. That's been proven over going on 11 games now. They're not better than Ohio State. Does that mean they can't beat Ohio State? Of course not. Those are two different things. They can beat Ohio State. Similar to last year's game, I would sit right here after the game and tell you, Michigan just beat Ohio State fair and square. Give them all the credit in the world. Ohio State's still better than Michigan, but they didn't win the game. Michigan won the game. Credit Michigan with the win. Ohio State's still better, but they didn't play better on that day. That's what happened last year. That could happen again this year. Now, comparing Texas and Michigan, I think they're very comparable. They're very comparable. Texas has more highs and lows, or they have one low in losing to Florida. Florida, record-wise, is not a good football team. But if you know football, understand talent, you know that Florida, like nobody in the mid-tier or lower tier of the Big Ten would want to see Florida like on a regular basis. Not saying that they wouldn't win the games. I'm not saying like Illinois wouldn't beat Florida, for example. I'm saying it wouldn't be a real easy win for them, and maybe they wouldn't beat Florida. We just saw Florida take Ole Miss down to the last couple minutes of the game. We saw them beat Texas. We've seen them play well on occasion against other good teams. Yes. So, yes, Texas went to overtime against Kentucky and Mississippi State. They won those games. Mississippi State's good enough to beat Arizona State, who's in the rankings this week. And Kentucky played within the score of Ole Miss. Kentucky's got a pretty long list of decent competitive games that they've played. So I don't know what the point is here, but I think that they're comparable. So Michigander seems like a decent comment to me. Like you're not stating anything that's not true. Texas did lose to Florida, and they went to overtime with Kentucky and Mississippi State, and they got blown out by Georgia. And they're probably comparable with Michigan. Texas has much better wins than Michigan. They have a bad mark on their resume in losing to Florida by one score in the swamp. Okay. These games against Kentucky and Mississippi State, yeah, Texas struggled slightly more than Michigan did against the likes of Purdue and Northwestern. Mississippi State, Kentucky. I'd certainly take Kentucky and Mississippi State slightly, but yeah, they're comparable. That argument could go all night. Michigan, Texas. I will stay with my analysis that Texas has shown us higher highs and a few lower lows than Michigan. I don't think there's any question about that. Michigan has not beaten an Oklahoma. They certainly didn't, did they? They have not beaten a Vanderbilt. And Texas has one other win in there that's pretty good that I'm forgetting right this second. Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, and somebody else. All right. Super chat coming in. We appreciate many stopping by. It's Mr. Mark saying we're all delusional. Yeah, I'm kind of scolding some folks. Not all of you, just like 93%. No. As I stated a few weeks ago, if all of you took me to your job in your chosen industry, your expertise, I would ask a lot of stupid questions and make a lot of dumb comments. Absolutely, I would. Okay, we got Adam stopping by. Here we go. Adam's got the rankings for us. We appreciate your contribution, Adam. Thank you so much, Minnie, as well. Mark, the correct ranking should be Georgia number 1. Okay, Georgia's number 1. Ohio State's number 2. Is this coming from Adam, who for weeks upon weeks upon weeks upon weeks upon weeks said that it was a complete farce that Ohio State was ranked number 1? That Indiana and or Texas A&M should be ranked ahead of them? I'm not understanding what happened here. I guess the magical win against UCLA did it. Georgia's number 1, according to Adam. Ohio State's number 2. Indiana's number 3. Texas A&M's number 4. Oregon is 5. Texas Tech is 6. Ole Miss is 7. Notre Dame 8. Oklahoma 9. Alabama 10. Miami 11. USC at 12. BYU has no class arches done. I really don't think your rankings are that crazy. You are valuing recency. There's no question about that. You're big into recency. So Georgia just blasted Texas. And other than that, Georgia has done what recently? They beat Florida by not much. Yeah. So I don't know where Georgia's looked that impressive recently. They beat Ole Miss. That was a really good fourth quarter. Beat them by a touchdown at home. They did beat Texas at home. Yeah, and that was an impressive win. So, yes, if these are the Week 12 rankings, solely Week 12, then, okay, Georgia's number 1. They should not be number 1. They lost to Alabama at home. So, yeah, I don't need to tell you where you're in error, but it's not too horribly bad. I've got Ohio State number 1, Indiana 2, Texas A&M 3, Georgia 4, Ole Miss 5, Oklahoma 6, Oregon 7, Bama 8, Vandy 9, Texas Tech 10. Then I've got Miami 11 and Notre Dame at 12, USC at 13, BYU 14. Those are my rankings. And then we've got a comment coming in from Michigander. Fact is, Michigan has yet to lose to a team with a losing record. Bravo. Texas does. Michigan has 2 losses. Texas has 3. Facts are facts. Well, those are facts. They are selected facts. There are a couple facts. So there you go. They both have one very crucial common denominator. It's called Oklahoma. And my goodness, the results were much different. Okay. Got Rob stopping by. Rob, what's going on tonight?
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, so I have to, unfortunately, disagree with Trey as much as I like him, and he's a really good guy, and I like listening to his calls. But even as a Notre Dame fan, I can't just agree with some of the things he was saying. Like, now, I will say, I'm not so sure that Pitt is just a really shitty team. We're going to find out a lot more about Pitt in the coming days because they're going to have to play Georgia Tech and Miami.
Yeah.
So those are 2 games that Pitt could either possibly win or get throttled. So I'm not saying Pitt's a good team. I don't know. I still don't think we know quite enough about Pitt to make a super valuable judgment about them at the moment. But like you said, they're probably similar. They're probably in that same vein as like, they're probably not as good as Iowa. I mean, who knows? We're going to find out about Pitt. You can't consider that a good win if you're a Notre Dame fan. It was a dominating win, and Notre Dame still left some points on the table in that game anyways. So
yes, it was a dominating win. And
yeah.
just to be clear, while it appeared as though I was piling on Notre Dame, I believe that Notre Dame is clearly one of the 10 best teams in the country. So there's a difference in my mind between resumes and whom I believe are the best. And
For sure.
I think that Oklahoma and Alabama have better resumes than Notre Dame. Not by much, but I believe they do.
Yeah, earlier on the Big Ten show that we were on, or that you were on, I said, probably the way I predicted it was that they would probably say Oklahoma 8, Alabama 9, Notre Dame 10. That's what I thought they would do. They clearly have a very big they value recency, right? I mean, that's very clear. Recency bias is huge with this committee, whether or not they're going to admit it or not. So Alabama losing to Oklahoma, and then when you add that to their really bad loss against Florida State, I think that punished Alabama in their minds. I'm just speculating on what the committee is thinking here. For me, if I was on the committee, I would look at Alabama and say, are they one of the 10 best teams in the country? I believe so. The problem with Alabama, and I think this is hurting them perhaps in the rankings a little bit, or the committee's mind, they can't run the ball. And this is, to me, this is very odd, because it's Alabama we're talking about. I mean, Alabama is supposed to be big offensive linemen, push guys off the spot, move the ball, open gaps, be sound, be fit, and they're just not able to get any running game going at all. Like, they haven't hit 100 yards rushing in the last 3 games. So for me, that would be a concern if I was looking at Alabama. But yeah, I would have probably put Alabama ahead of Notre Dame, and I'm a Notre Dame fan. So heck, if Miami finishes the year at 10-2 and they don't play in a conference championship, Notre Dame finishes the season 10-2. They're obviously not going to play in a conference championship. Again, and I've said this all along. If they end up picking Miami over Notre Dame, I can't be mad. How can you be mad? They lost the head-to-head. Now, I will say this.
If that in fact happens, let's say Miami is not impressive against Pitt or against Virginia Tech this week. They win both games by a touchdown. And we've got this direct comparison, of course, besides the head-to-head, where Notre Dame just throttled Pitt. And again, they could have named the score of that game. My goodness, they ran over Pitt. The total yardage in the first half of that game was just insane. That how they could justify raising Miami from 4 spots. They'd have to raise them 5 spots to get them past Notre Dame, after Miami would beat Virginia Tech, who sucks, and Pitt, who's the 50th best team in the country. And Notre Dame would have beaten, again, inconsequential teams. Syracuse, I guess they'll have a comparison score there, and against Stanford, comparison score there, but nothing of consequence there. How they would raise Miami 5 spots. Now, I would like you, and this is very gracious of you saying as a Notre Dame fan, I would not be against it in totality of 10-2 Miami with a win head-to-head over Notre Dame 10-2 head-to-head loss. Absolutely. But bringing them 8 spots, 9 spots to get them past where they were a couple weeks ago with no consequential wins is ridiculous. You're that they completely botched it.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And what I more meant was, if I'm just looking at it objectively based on the record, 10-2, no conference championship, Miami won the head-to-head. That's why I wouldn't be mad, because Miami at that point would have earned it. But like you said, because they botched it so bad at the beginning, putting Miami so far down behind Notre Dame, then that would definitely raise a stink by a lot of people. Now, like I said, I wouldn't throw a fit, but I guarantee you there'd be Notre Dame fans that would be pitchforking. How is Miami jumping us? But you know what?
And they should. They would have justification, not based on the results on the field, but based on the process.
Right. Yeah. The process, the committee really, I mean, I mostly like what the committee has done with the conference or the college football playoff rankings so far, except for they really botched the Miami Notre Dame thing. Like they botched it bad. But and I think what they're hoping, I guarantee you what they're hoping right now is that Miami does another, November Miami thing and finds a way to lose one of these last two games. They're hoping to God that Miami stumbles and falls, so they don't have to deal with all the people that are going to be upset about this when it boils down. So, very interesting. Like I said, I predicted it was going to be Oklahoma, Bama, then Notre Dame, but that's not what the committee did. And for the people that are just acting like there's no way in heck that Alabama could possibly be behind Notre Dame, well, there are some valid reasons. Like I already mentioned, they can't run the ball, which is not an Alabama-like trait. And they have a worse loss. They have a worse loss than Notre Dame, and they lost that game by more points in that single game than Notre Dame lost both of their games. So there are some reasons why you could put Alabama behind Notre Dame, but I wouldn't have personally done it.
I do not think it's ridiculous. I don't think there's anything in these rankings that I'd have to review it again that I think is ridiculous. The 4-spot difference between Notre Dame and Miami, I think, is a little heavy again, but there's nothing here that I think is ridiculous.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, overall, I'm pretty happy with the rankings this year, except, like I said, I've already mentioned the Miami Notre Dame thing is hilarious how they did it in the first week. See, I knew after that first week where they put Miami so far behind Notre Dame, I knew that was a huge, that was going to be a huge problem for them, because how can you justify that? And again, I think the committee was hoping and praying that Miami would keep playing badly, because they were not playing very good. But that's not happening. I mean, Miami just crushed NC State, and we're going to see how they handle. They've got to play Pitt, and I forget who else they play. I don't think they play anybody else good besides
Miami's got Virginia Tech.
Okay, Virginia. Okay, well, I mean, they could stumble in one of those games. We'll see, but that's what the committee's hoping, Mark. They're desperately hoping that Miami loses another game.
They are,
and I don't really have a whole lot to say. I think it's a pretty good list for my money. Like I said, I would have had it a little bit different. I will say one thing. The team that I actually have an issue with is Ole Miss. Not a huge issue, but I think Ole Miss moving up, I don't know about that. They struggled with Florida, and they had a bye week, basically 2 byes in a row because they played Citadel. And I just don't know how, if I have any questions about any of the teams in the top 10, I think Ole Miss is one of the teams I have the biggest issues with. But again, I can't fault them. They are 10-1. You could look at A&M and how they struggled against South Carolina. I mean, every team has a blemish except for Ohio State. So I can't be too upset with any of the rankings. And it's going to be interesting to see how the season plays out.
Yeah, I don't know that they necessarily moved Ole Miss up. They moved Alabama down.
Right. And everybody else kind of moves up by proxy. But except for Notre Dame, which they didn't really. I mean, they're lucky to be at 9, so they can't really complain about not moving up. So,
and Ole Miss has a better record than Oklahoma by 1 game, and they also have a pretty solid head-to-head win against Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
So that means a lot there. That's really what's holding Ole Miss up.
Well, so my question about Ole Miss, I forget, when did Ole Miss play Oklahoma? Was that right after?
It was only about 3 weeks ago.
What was that after the thumb injury for Mateer?
Yes.
I don't.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. So, I mean, I don't think now I'm speculating majorly here. I don't know. I'll say this. This is obviously an opinion. I don't know that Oklahoma drops that game against Texas if Mateer is 100%. I don't know. Now, no one knows. But anyway, I'm just going to get off of that. I'm not going to speculate too much. We could speculate all night about this or that. But always great talking to you, Mark. I'm going to let other callers get on here, and have a great night.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, so Oklahoma, again, Ole Miss has the win against Oklahoma by 8 points. Ole Miss's second best win, you could argue, would possibly be Tulane. Beat them by 5 touchdowns. Tulane's in the rankings now, and will probably be, if they can win out, will be the group of 5 rep. So the committee has told us that Tulane will be the group of 5 rep if they can win out, because they will notch at least one more big win in the conference championship game. Ole Miss beat LSU. They're 6-4. That would be their 3rd best win. Beating South Carolina is nothing great, but let's also consider South Carolina took Texas A&M to the wire, and Ole Miss beat them by 16. Their one loss is nothing to be ashamed of. They had a 9-point lead in the second half against Georgia. They blew it. They lost by a touchdown to Georgia. So that's Ole Miss's loss, by 1 touchdown to Georgia. All right, we got Biscuit stopping by. Biscuit, what's going on?
How's it going? Hey, can I make one small suggestion?
Sure.
If someone calls in and starts talking about Pitt, you set a timer of 25 seconds, and if at the end of that 25 seconds they're still talking about Pitt, you flush them.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion.
So I was just having a little bit of a debate in the chat there with your buddy John Diadamo. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Diadamo?
You did.
He's claiming SEC bias, and I asked him to explain how there's SEC bias, and he keeps pointing to a TV contract by ESPN. And I said, but how does that translate to the playoff committee? So what he's trying to tell me is that Hunter Yurachek, the athletic director at the University of Arkansas, Chris Alt, athletic director at Nevada, Troy Dannon, athletic director of Nebraska, Mark D'Antonio, former head coach of Cincinnati and Michigan State, on and on and on. Those people have been influenced by ESPN this year to vote for and push at the SEC teams up in seeds. And the prior year and the year prior to that and the year prior to that, when there were different people there, they were also all influenced by that. And none of them have ever come out and said anything about that and kept it secret because they were threatened with death if they said anything about it, or how does that work?
Yeah, I'm looking at the rankings trying to figure out where this SEC bias is, because we've got 3 undefeated teams in America and the SEC team is 3rd. Okay. So that's the first place where the committee could insert some kind of bias right there, and they did not. We've got Georgia at number 4, and so we've got a number of 1-loss teams. We got Georgia, Texas Tech, Ole Miss.
I'm sorry to interrupt you here. So all the names I just mentioned, and what John Diadamo points out is that I mentioned the Arkansas AD. So somehow the Arkansas AD alone is getting in control and influencing all the other people from all the other conferences, former NFL players, the athletic director of the University of Virginia and NC State, and he's influencing them because of the TV contract ESPN has. This is brilliant stuff. I didn't realize how brilliant these conspiracy theorists are. They're amazing.
Yeah, again, if we could connect them to the rankings and find something that's you can take an angle on any of this and say, okay, make an argument for the ACC that there's ACC bias, and I could probably come up with something fairly decent. I could do it with the Big 12. Shoot, Texas Tech's ranked ahead of Ole Miss and Oregon. Are you kidding me? Playing in that conference? You could do all sorts of things. I'm not seeing real SEC bias here. Oregon has just such a weak list of wins that I cannot elevate them past Ole Miss, considering that Ole Miss lost on the road to Georgia by a score and Oregon lost by 10 points against Indiana at home. I just think that those are pretty comparable losses. They're really comparable.
I agree,
and Ole Miss has played better teams and beaten better teams, especially considering the win against Oklahoma.
I agree. And the thing is if you're going to, in my opinion, if you look at these playoff rankings, if you're going to slide any teams up, it's actually the SEC team sort of getting flaked out because they're taking Texas Tech over Ole Miss. In my opinion, Notre Dame should be back behind Miami and Alabama, but they're not. So Miami to me should be up in front of Notre Dame, and Alabama should also. They should both be in front of Notre Dame.
And what is factual here is that in totality, people may not like this, that don't like the SEC, and I don't particularly care for the SEC. I'm not an SEC guy in any such way. I just tell it like it is. The SEC played the best football. This cannot be argued. The SEC played the best football outside the conference, and it's not even close.
I agree.
The Big Ten's under 500 outside the conference. The Big 12 is under 500. The ACC is 5-17 against the other conferences and Notre Dame. The SEC is 11-4. They won the games. They really had one bad performance. That's Alabama losing against Florida State. The other games that they lost outside the conference are very understandable. You know, Texas now, who's not supposedly a good football team, lost by a touchdown against the number one team in the country on the road. And let's see. Who else?
I just got, hold on, just breaking news. I just got further evidence a moment ago from the further SEC bias from your friend John Diadamo. He's pointing out in 2023 when Florida State got left out in favor of Alabama, the SEC champion. I got news for him. That season, FSU was the 6th best team. Georgia was better than them too. So I don't know where this constant crying over. I understand they were 12-0, but even prior to the injury, they weren't dominant. And after the QB injury, they were less dominant.
So
they got it right, those 4. And by the way, I should have a grievance as a Georgia fan because there were a lot of Georgia fans running around saying we went 12-0 in the regular season with a tough schedule. We lost by 3 in the SEC championship. We should have been in. And I was like, no, we lost the wrong game. That's too bad. We lost the wrong game.
Getting back to the here and now, let's see if I can collect my thoughts here. Getting back to the here and now. Yeah, there's just no argument, and we're dealing with results, facts, that the SEC played better than the other conferences, and it's not close. Again, the Alabama loss against Florida State is really the only game that you cannot excuse from the SEC. The other losses are very understandable. Arkansas is going to lose to Notre Dame. In those kind of games, I'm trying to think what other, Texas is going to lose to the number one team in the country by a touchdown on the road. The other SEC losses were very, very understandable. The conference just played much better. Now, going back to 2023, the committee had an out, and they used it. I would have loved to have seen what would have happened if Jordan Travis didn't get hurt and the committee was faced with 13-0 Florida State against an SEC champion Alabama with 1 loss. And then obviously Alabama's loss was to Texas. So that gave Texas the spot, because the committee, since day one, this goes all the way back to 2014, whether you like it or not, I have mixed opinions on this one. The injury factor has been, since day one, they put it in their criteria. If there is a significant injury that could affect a team's performance, whether, especially if they're able to evaluate the team before the injury, after the injury, i.e. 2014, Ohio State loses its starting quarterback, JT Barrett, but they get one performance with the backup quarterback, Cardell Jones, and they annihilate a top 10 Wisconsin team 59-0. Okay, check mark. Doesn't seem to have affected Ohio State. They're good. Florida State, however, played 2 games without Jordan Travis against decent competition, and their offense was atrocious against Florida. They won like 15-6, and against Louisville, they couldn't throw for 50 or 60 yards in those games. So the committee, maybe they got an out there, because I would have loved to have seen the comparison. And again, what the decision would have been with Jordan Travis, who is one of the best quarterbacks in college football, but they used the injury factor, and it was validated by the poor performance on offense in 2 games. So
yeah,
that's what
I'm of the opinion that they got it right that year. And again, I'm a Georgia fan who's sitting at 5 too.
Got left out. I hate that Florida State got left out, because they did everything that they possibly could and won all their games, and they should have been in the playoff. I think 2 things can be true. Mm-hmm. If the committee is tasked with selecting the 4 best teams, which that's what they are, they selected the 4 best teams that year. But Florida State earned a spot. They won all their games. They should have had a spot, but they were not one of the 4 best teams in the country.
I agree with you. I think they weren't. And I agree, it is a shame that a 12-0 team doesn't get in. And, them creating initially a 14 playoff, which didn't cover at that time the 5 major conferences, made no sense at the time. But whatever, that's what they did. But I think they got the 4 right in. And, again, a lot of my Georgia brethren would disagree with me and think that Georgia should have gotten in, but I wasn't of that opinion. I felt like we lost the wrong game, and that's unfortunate, right? The funny other thing that I wanted to mention was Darrell was talking about the playoff committee and talking about how they had tiered out teams. How do you tier out teams without actually assessing them and determining what tier they're put in? Like, that doesn't even make sense to me, right? He was saying that they were blocked off into groupings, but don't they have to rank those teams in order to put them in groupings? Unless they were using different criteria to create the tiers and then adding in other factors afterwards, then I guess that would mean that it just doesn't make sense to me.
It makes no sense, and it also even more so makes no sense to me if, in fact, their groupings are rigid to, regardless of how good these teams are or how large the group, the peers are, we're going to stick to, we're only comparing these 4, these 8, and then the next 4, 8, because as we all know, every season's different in terms of the composition of teams. We saw it in the 14 playoffs. Sometime there was one great team and they just smoked everyone. And then there were other times where there were 2 great teams and they smoked the other 2 in the playoff.
Right.
You can't just say, we're going to compare just these teams. And like you say, it's an oxymoron because you've got to rank the team to compare them.
Yes, you
to
do.
Put them in the group.
You have to decide who's comparable in order to put them in comparable groups. So I don't understand that. I want to ask you another question off the side and what your thoughts are on this. So for me, I treat conference championships just like another data point, like it's another game, and and its value depends on who you're playing in that game. So in other words, if Indiana and Ohio State are playing in a conference championship, obviously that's going to have more value to the winner than Georgia Tech and Virginia playing because the team that you beat is not as high a quality. Is that fair?
Oh, yeah.
Or do you put more stock into getting a ribbon, is what I say, getting a ribbon?
No, that's whatever the school, the administration, the fan base feels good about winning a conference championship. I'm old school. I love conference championships. I think they mean something, but in this, they only sentimentally mean something. And obviously it goes on a list of conference championships, and you can brag about whoever you are. Alabama's got the most in the SEC, and if they can keep that lead and so forth and so on. Michigan's got the most in the Big Ten, although, side note, Ohio State's got the most since they joined the conference. But anyway, so, yeah. But in terms of, we're still evaluating teams, and therefore that's a tangible thing. You won the conference championship, therefore you're the conference champion. And last year you get one of the top 4 spots because you just won a conference championship, but that's obviously out the window. And you just evaluate the games and the schedule and the opponents.
Yeah, because the problem I have with this is that what people say now is that when a team goes to a conference championship, because they have to play an extra game, if they lose, it shouldn't count. But the thing I don't understand about that is if they win, it does. So
absolutely.
That doesn't make any sense to me. To me, it's you get the opportunity to go in. If you win the game, you're you have an auto bid, right? Basically into the playoffs. So that's the benefit. If you take a loss, people are obviously going to look at it okay, you lost to a high quality team, but it has to be factored in. It's play on the field.
Yeah, you cannot tell me that if Georgia Tech loses to Virginia 52-0, that we can just ignore that. Like,
right.
It doesn't. It's the same as if they would have lost 28-27. No, we are evaluating performance. I say this, I've said this a number of times, and maybe you caught it. I think I said it earlier tonight, that when the committee said last year going into conference championship weekend, we are not taking the conference championship games into consideration, meaning other than the winner advances as a top 4 team, the loser doesn't face any kind of scrutiny or penalty, and it does not count against them. Okay, so question number one, if I was Reese Davis after conference championship weekend and the selections went out, would have been number one, did you watch the conference championship games? And the answer should have been no. Because why would you watch the conference championship games if you're not evaluating them?
Right.
And even if they would have answered correctly, lied or otherwise, said no, we did not watch the conference championship games. My next question would have been, do you know the scores of the conference championship games? That answer also should have been no, we do not. We only know Oregon beat Penn State. That's all we know, because we can't say, oh, it was 49-10. Or, you know, it's 30-28. No, since
Right.
it didn't matter, it didn't matter. So you should be totally cut off from that information. If you're being just and if you're being consistent. Obviously, we know that's not the case. So it was just a stupid exercise.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I think it's an important data point to have. And
Yes.
I mean, it's 100% important. And and simply on the fact that if you go to ESPN's playoff predictor and you put a team in and you have them lose in the championship game, the percentage goes down. Well, why is that?
Yeah. And these teams
because
playing,
people will look at that.
Yes, and teams are playing a 13th game. And most of these teams only play at most 3 or 4 teams of that caliber. And that game shouldn't count.
Yeah.
Like if you go like 3 to 4 deep on an ACC schedule, like it falls off the cliff. Like, and we're not going to evaluate this game. And when Virginia's out there playing Louisville and who else?
No, exactly.
That's like the best team they played. They beat Louisville, a team that's going to be like 9-3, I guess. And I can't think of anybody else that Virginia played that's worth a damn. Nobody.
They're not a very good football team. I don't know what that earlier callers was. Call was that they're a good football team.
Yeah, I love the story.
They're not a.
Yeah,
18th is fair. I don't understand the scrutiny of people. It almost seems like sometimes I hear all this all the time. Tennessee shouldn't be ranked, and I hear that, and I'm like, but okay, but don't you have to provide more information than that? Like, who should be ranked over them? Like, what? I don't understand how them being 23rd or 20th is such an affront to everyone. Like, they're 7-3. They lost in overtime to Georgia. They played a tight game with Oklahoma, outgained them yardage wise, and they lost to Alabama in a game that was turned over by a pick six, 99 yards. So 7-3 to me. 7-3. 3 tough losses to top 10 teams. I mean, 18th, 20th, 23rd, whatever. Why is everybody so offended by them being ranked?
I've got Tennessee at number 20. And again, yes, I understand they haven't beaten anyone of note, but yes, they have had the opportunity 3 times to play 3 of the best teams in the country, and they were competitive. If not, as you say, that Georgia game right down to the wire. Virginia has beaten Louisville, who's 7-3. They have not beaten another team with a winning record, and that's even in the ACC with a winning record.
Right.
Nobody. And I love the Virginia story. As soon as I looked at their schedule preseason, and as soon as, especially, they won that Florida State game, I was like, I'm rooting for them. Like, I would love to see Virginia, but are they that good? No.
A couple of off the topic things just real quick. I don't know if you've seen before, but the tiebreakers for the SEC championship, if things end up the way they're going. So let's say we end up with A&M undefeated, and then we have Georgia, Alabama, and Ole Miss all tied at 7-1.
Yeah.
It actually, because of the 3-way tie, it doesn't go head to head because they all haven't played each other since Ole Miss and Alabama. It goes to cumulative SEC record of opponents.
Oh, so the toughest schedule.
So you can count out Ole Miss because their schedule is much weaker. They played a lot lesser teams, and so the record's worse. Georgia and Alabama are kind of close. So the SEC championship would be decided by games like Kentucky versus Vanderbilt, Tennessee versus Florida. it's really there's like 5 games that would
Interesting.
determine whether Alabama or Georgia go to the SEC title.
What's interesting is that the SEC set it up that way because you can do it that way, or there have been tiebreakers in the past from other conferences that said we initially go with the 3-way tiebreaker, but if one team's eliminated in the way that you just we're going to go with aggregate schedule strength. So one of them gets eliminated, then we're going to go with the other 2 since they did play. Let's say 3 teams tied and none of them played each other. Then we're just going strictly by the aggregate schedule strength. But that's interesting that Alabama would lose out possibly, even though they won the game.
Georgia needs about 5 results to go their way, actually. So Alabama's
got a decent.
Alabama's kind of got the lead, and they would still need.
Okay.
The last thing on it, and your Big Ten fans are going to love this, so to show that I'm a fair that I bring up things. But did you know that Texas A&M has played? You're probably aware of this. Has played nearly the bottom 7 teams in the SEC, and that the cumulative SEC record of their opponents is 13-42.
Wow. I would have guessed that just because when I was searching for their best wins, I was thinking, okay, they didn't play Alabama, Georgia. They didn't play, Ole Miss. They didn't play.
Texas. They literally played the 16th, 15th, 14th, 13th, 12th, 11th, and depending upon whether you think Missouri or Tennessee is better, 10th or 9th best team in the SEC. That's their 7 games. And I think Tennessee's better than Missouri. So that literally they've played 9 through 16.
So, if you looked preseason, I still think that could have been helped. It's not like, wow, Alabama went 3-9 and LSU went 3-9, and we could have never seen this happening, that Texas A&M backed into this bad schedule. The SEC should have seen that. This is very similar, the Biscuit, to when Texas and Oklahoma joined the SEC. I looked at their 2 schedules and I said, what are they doing here? Oklahoma's schedule is so much tougher than Texas's. And I did an analysis, did a video, and Texas was playing teams that had a 35% winning percentage from the year before in the SEC, and Oklahoma's was 65%. And a few people argued with me on it, which I understand because you can't see the future. I'm just going based on the past. But what was funny was that it actually played out exactly as it did the year before. And Texas ended up last year playing 35%, or I guess it would have been this year, 35% winning percentage, or no, last year, first year in the SEC. Texas played a 35%, and Oklahoma's SEC opponents won 65% of their games. And that's what we run into with these conferences that are so large, that the schedules become so disparate. And I think that's a bad byproduct of that.
Yeah, I mean, so last year Texas got drugged for that. They played a schedule that was like that, but they only played Georgia and then they lost to Georgia right at home. And they were drugged for that, and people were talking about them when they made it to the SEC championship. It's interesting that no one really is talking about that about A&M, and I guess it's because they haven't lost, but the schedule is actually worse than Texas's last year as far as SEC schedule. Now, I'm not saying A&M's a bad football team. I'm like their dominance level has been good, and I've watched them, and they look impressive in games. But there has to be some nervousness about not having your position groups stretched by some teams that have the ability to stretch them, right?
Yeah. So they're 11-0, 10-0.
They are 10-0, I think.
They are okay. So they're 10-0. So do they have one of these cupcake games, or do they have an SEC game? Let's see.
They have a cupcake game, I think, and then they have Texas. They go to Texas. So Texas will actually be the toughest team they play.
Yeah.
In the conference. Now they have a win at Notre Dame, which is a solid win. I'm not saying A&M is a bad team. I think they're different this year than they have been in the past. I certainly think that. And they're very capable, but it's just interesting that they've managed to escape to have a schedule that's just so bad within the conference.
So Texas is going to be probably 5-3 in the conference, so that's going to be added to that 13-42.
And I want everyone to understand too. When you're looking at your opponent's conference schedule, you're never going to have a record where you're winning 75%, because basically what you're doing is usually when you're at the top of the conference, you're taking a lot of wins out. So your record's going to be below your opponent's records are going to be below 500 likely. So if you're near 500, that's actually really good. That's really
if you're Ohio State and you go 9-0 in the Big Ten, you've just saddled your entire schedule with an 0-9 record. Yes.
Right. And it's a little unfair. I mean, again, if you play like South Carolina 1-6 versus playing like LSU 3-4, I mean, I'm sure there's nominal differences between that, but one team gives you 6 losses versus 4, so it's a little unfair. But
so Texas A&M, what's going to look really bad is if they lose this game to Texas, they'll still go to the SEC championship. Well, then I guess they won't. If they lose to Texas,
it could become a 4-way tie. It could be a 4-way tie, and their schedule is so their SEC schedule, they're probably out.
So they'll get kicked out. Yeah.
It's really interesting. So we're not going to know until it's kind of cool, because rivalry weekend is going to determine a lot. I mean, we're going to have some really, really interesting games down the stretch. Just one more thing, and I'll go. I know I've been on for too long. About the Heisman, I'm not a big Heisman person. I have a suggestion. I thought a good idea for the Heisman, instead of I'm against having quarterbacks win it every year. It's become a quarterbacks, running backs, receivers award. What would you think about taking all of the awards for each individual position, like the Fred Biletnikoff Award for receiver, the Bronco Nagurski Award, and sending all those position award winners to New York, and then voting on that? And I know initially the first thought would be, hey, an O lineman still isn't going to win it because they don't have stats, but at least it would open the door to start analyzing what they do and seeing highlight tapes of how dominant they are, and maybe get some fans to start looking at things just beyond passing yards and running yards and touchdowns.
So we're going to send like 11 players to New York?
Yeah.
We got the Lombardi, the
or have some sort of format where you vote them down, like where you, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like you could take those 11 and then have some precursor voting and narrow it down to 5 if you wanted to, or whatever. But
I don't think there's enough time, because all the games have to be played to legitimately award all those position awards, and then to figure out, okay, now we're looking at so-and-so won the Lombardi, the Nagurski, the Biletnikoff, the et cetera, all of them, and then have another vote or whatever. I don't think logistically there's enough time to go through all that.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. So they determine it during the Army Navy game a week after. It's determined during the championship weekend, right? Isn't that when they? Why can't they vote for the position awards and then do it a week later?
I voted today for the Remington Award.
Did you really?
Yes.
Did you vote for me?
Did I vote for you? Yeah. So I voted for the Groza, the Remington. What else did I get? So whatever else I voted for, and the All-America team. So that had to be in by the end of the week, which I don't necessarily agree with that, because still have 2 games left.
I will say this: you're probably one of the most honorable voters in that grouping. I mean, I'm sure you took your time and did it right, versus some of the others that we see not caring about it.
Yes, well, we've seen bad votes all over the place for certain things. Yeah, both the top 25 rankings and also for anybody that cares and remembers and likes baseball, Rafael Palmeiro winning a Gold Glove, having played 28 games at first base one year.
No, I didn't even know about that.
Yeah.
Rafael, he was a great player. But
yeah, he was a great player, but that particular year he had like back issues or something. They DH'd him like almost the entire season, and he still won the Gold Glove.
Well, yeah, the fan voting in the All-Star games was also awful too. How many times did we see players who were injured for 60 games?
I have no issue with that, though.
What's that?
I think the fans can do whatever they want. I have no issue
Yeah.
with fans voting in whoever they want. And me personally, I do get the argument that they shouldn't get to vote. I'll throw another one, 1981. That shows how old I am. Reggie Jackson's hitting 194. He's starting in right field in the All-Star game. But, hey, he got the votes. People wanted to see him. There he is. I don't have an issue with that. But for the official awards for best kicker, best wide receiver, yes, you need to do best, first baseman, second baseman, etc. It needs to be done by professionals that actually look at it and take their time and take it seriously.
Yeah, we grew up in the era where I would go to in Atlanta, so I would go to a Braves game, and you'd get 50 All-Star ballots dumped in your lap at the games.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
and then you'd have those awful little things you had to pinprick and
yes, it's like,
and you'd end up knocking out 3 or 4 of them instead of the one you meant. And you're like, you throw that one out.
Oh yeah, I used to do the same thing. I'd grab a stack of them, sit there during the game, and just.
It's like brave.
Yeah, Indian.
Is that yeah?
Oh yeah. All right, man.
Well, I appreciate talking to you. Thanks.
Sure.
Thanks again.
Thanks for stopping by.
Mm-hmm.
The biscuit. I don't know if that's butter. Like I just get a biscuit with butter. Like if I go to Cracker Barrel, get the biscuits, butter. Some people like I totally get gravy on biscuits. I can eat that too. That's fine. Yeah, butter, some jelly. That's good too. All right, folks. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Unless somebody can step up with $103 in like going once, going twice, going 3 times, we're way over by 45 minutes. So we will see you on Wednesday night back here at 10 p.m. Eastern Time.